We raised pre-flop 7-10. We've got a gut shot with backdoor flush draw and medium overcard. Around half pot, I'm totally okay with check calling the float. There are definitely lots of weaker draws, so we can check call. Sometimes he will give up. We can bluff them later on. Also, obviously, we can improve easily with the club, with the 10, with the 9. If our opponent checks, we can use it to run some bluffs. We are around pot size bet. The guy checked, so it sounds like this might be a jack. With our 10-7, we block flushes and straights, so he should have less hands that are able to call big bets. So I don't mind just ripping it in around 1.3 SPR to 1. This is the ratio, stack size to pot ratio, where we can just run as a bluff if we want to put maximum pressure on the second, third pair, right? 1.3, it means that 130% of the pot. 5BB, which is called 8-9, always has great equity and pretty interesting situation on the right table against two players, betting half pot. I don't want necessarily our opponent to call frequently with two overcards. If they want to call, I prefer them paying a lot. And what is interesting, king of hearts on the table, ace of hearts in our hand means that there are not that many two cards, offsuited cards in our opponent's range that could call the flop bet. So the rate rather sounds like a flush draw, slow play jack, maybe a pocket pair. I'm not so happy with battling the turn. So I'm definitely going with a check. The river is pretty simple. So, you know, these are low stakes. Don't expect your opponents to be super solid here. I'm definitely just raise jamming our ace. I expect calls from queen of cards. I expect calls from many other random cards. So just even trips. So I'm just ripping it in. Give your opponent a chance to make a mistake. Sometimes he will appear with jack 5 offsuit that he called pre-flop, but he shouldn't be worried about it. This is interesting. Our opponent called the flop bet. He didn't raise, and now he bets the river. There are misdraws, plenty of misdraws that our queen high might be ahead. So I'm okay with calling the river probe. I expect that very often 5 would just raise on the flop, especially there are straight draws, there are flush draws, and also his river size was not too high. So I'm totally okay calling river probes, especially these around half pot. There are plenty of bluffs in this line. So keep that in mind. The only hand that he was repping for value was only a 5. And if we believe that 5 might be played differently, go ahead, pull the trigger. And even the queen high is pretty okay because there are not that many hands that are there are not that many bluffs that are better than our hand. So I think two kickers are totally okay, especially on shallow stacks where we can expect that king highs would isolate pre-flop. So this queen high is actually pretty nice. 5, so we will limp pre-flop with the plan to limp raise. As it goes check, we just go to the showdown. 9 deuce sounds interesting. We can go for a check raise on 2 Broadway boards, especially on low stacks. Stack sizes. This is a cool board to bluff a lot because first of all, people don't have that many Broadways. They just open shove it 7 BB deep. They don't have like suited hands because they open shove it on the stack size. They don't have kings, they open shove it, and they don't really bet queens on the flop because it's a second pair. Very often people just start checking their second pairs. So even going for a check min raise sounds okay. Right table, checking back a6. We face a pretty small bet with the open-ender. I'm calling, especially that we've got perfect odds. This is a very small bet. Additionally, even with the ace, we might be ahead against some hands like queen 10, queen jack, or queen x flush draws, whatever. And obviously, the odds are the most important. We bricked, we missed, so just check back. 3.5, pretty important info that the guy was min betting in the previous hand and now he runs a pot size bet. So pot size bet, so 3.5x button, post flop min bets, It means that he has sizing tells, right? Pretty important guy on the left button. Limper, which also tells us that this guy on the left prefers rather passive moves. He might not be a big fan of c-betting. C-betting for the button is around 50% after he limped. So this has to be a bit stronger range. 2 overcard with the gut shot. This is close between betting and stacking up. But as we play against button limper, again, because we isolated pre-flop. I prefer checking. We might expect checkbacks from hands that have equity and just check calling. We've got odds. Half pot is totally fine. If he jumps the turn, I don't expect him to do it with the semi-bluff too often. Sounds like a 10. They can just fold. Basically, in this bottom limp call range, very often these medium cards like 9, 10, jack, they hit him a lot. So even with gutshot with 2 over cards, we might see bet, but it's not that necessary. So yeah. Goes check, 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 check. We go to the showdown with the bottom pair. Our opponent check back ace high, which is fairly standard, nothing spectacular. 8 BB deep. That's close between calling and folding. If we play against passive guys, we have seen that the guy on the left has he had very low post-flop sizing, so he might have tendency to play pretty slow. So it's totally okay for us to play against these guys. If we play against more passive guys, it means that our post-flop EV will go higher. Overbet, c-bet. Right, so again, bottom limper and overbet c-bet shows that this guy has sizing tells as well. So this is pretty important, and especially on lower stakes, this is gonna be pretty frequent that people will play their sizings according to their hand strengths. The higher sizing they use, the stronger hand. So we should play tighter. On the left table, I made a float against this bottom limper again. So this is not so common on the higher stakes. So here, definitely you should exploit it because it gives lots of value. He just checked ace high board. We bet because people play according to their hand strength. So don't worry about it. Click 3-bet. Important info as well. Shows that this guy might just mean bet post-flop as well, or pot size bet. This is also an info for us that modeling sizing like that sometimes guy clicks, sometimes he goes with the pot size bet, definitely shows us the tendency to be extremely phase up. Queen 6, we're defending, especially that previously he just checked, folded. So here we should have pretty simple game against him. Whenever he checks, we just bet, no matter if we hit or not. And yeah, we value bet, we cut his equity. Simple as that. He thinks about it, calls, pretty nice turn. Most likely he has 2 overcards. I don't want him to fold these 2 overcards, so I don't want to, and also he tank called, so I don't want to throw him out of the pot. So I think half pot bet is my sizing. On the right, pot size bet to get max value from a 6, from 2 overs with the 8, from flush draw. And now whether we check and call the river bet because there are 2 overs that bricked, or we bet very little to control the pot to get value from this weaker 7, from these flush draws, and we check back the river. So this is pretty important whenever there are both lots of misdraws in the range and hence that we could value bet. Obviously some dunk bets might appear, but I expect that if he didn't raise the turn, we might be ahead. So I'm totally okay with calling. Yeah, the 6, so it's still completely fine. Right, he used small sizing. If he would jump out, that would be closer. I expect very often people to raise when they face these small turn bet sizings, and the river dunk bets don't appear that frequently. But definitely the most important move is on the turn, where if you see both hands that you beat and these misdraws, the worst thing to do is to check back with the plan to fold versus river probe, because your opponent will naturally have bluffs. He will realize equity for free, and he will have lots of value bets that he can protect with his bluffs. So it's way better to bet small as a second barrel, which will often let you reach the showdown for a pretty cheap price. 10-9 could be jumped, could be raised. Basically, the more passive your opponent is, the more thoughts about, the more ideas how to exploit him you have, the more you can just min raise. The more aggressive and competent opponent, you can jump 10-9 suited even on 20 BPD. Tens don't play that very well post-flop, out of position. Limpers guys also have tendency that they really like to look at the flop. There are Broadways. Very often we'll see at least one Broadway card, so I don't mind just ripping it in. Okay, yeah, the guy limped before. So nothing spectacular. The fact that someone limped queens, it's obviously in the range, but this is not the only thing. This guy limped previous hand as well. It's definitely a tendency, as you can see, that the player might prefer slow playing. He might really like doing these moves like this. Queens are in the range, but for sure in the range there are some random ace highs that might just limp call. So we shouldn't be worried about it. And similarly to the previous situation, even though we are 4 BB deep, just bet when he checked, because people play pretty straightforward. There's no need to level yourself, right? They linked 4 BB, they just check fold. They don't really understand rules, so exploit their tendency to play pretty straightforward. As you can see, the aggression frequency drops a lot, bet drops a lot, but whenever he bets, he uses rather higher sizings. So this is a pretty common tendency. So against these guys, we should play very carefully whenever they bet, though we should play extremely aggressively whenever they check, right? So our game is not just a little bit of aggressive everywhere or a little bit passive everywhere, but we narrow our aggression against checks, right, to target them versus checks. And we will overfold a lot when they bet. So this tendency, right, the button limping is a very common thing. Also, you can check it on the HUD. It's pretty quick to notice, right? The aggression frequency shines green. Same for the guy on the right. So there's less need to isolate like this guy pre-flop or do some crazy bluffs, because very often we'll have simple situations to bluff. Okay, so we hit the second pair, which sounds the best. Most likely, if he check called, he has a 10. I think 3 BB is a maximum sizing that we can get from a 10. So this is the sizing I'll use. And 0.8, his VPIP is pretty high, so I'm okay with jamming. He might still just call with some suited connectors or whatever. Versus lower VPIP, checking back would be totally okay. Even not a suited connector, but not a connector. Limp call in trash. So yeah. Eyes are shoving a6, 15 BB deep, nothing spectacular. The guy trapped kings. So again, you can see pretty extreme tendency to be passive. That's why versus these guys, it's important to bluff, but mainly one street, not necessarily two streets where we try to throw him out of a second or a third pair, because as you can see, they really like investing chips. Queen 9, so most likely we've got a best hand here. Ace highs, king highs, 8 BB deep, jump pre-flop. The question is, how do we want to proceed with the hand? We can bet and check call or bottle, actually. to catch his misdraws or throw them out. I think with our queen high, we're the best. If we had 5-6, we can battle. With the queen 9, sounds like interesting hand to check call. The 4 got counterfeited. There are lots of missed flush draws and straight draws that we're ahead of. So definitely, I prefer check calling. He just went to the showdown with the 9 high. Right, so we can go with the node under bluff, double paired 9 high. So this is info for us that he might be not be so aggressive with misdraws. We have not much info about him, though it's worth noting our opponents. And it's not only because one day we might meet this guy again, maybe it's in 1 minute that he runs another table, who knows, but maybe, what is more important is your ability to make quick notes. So this is what I like the most about it. And as you can see, I'm doing it. I'm doing these notes not because I necessarily believe that I'll meet these guys in the future, but it's just natural for me. This is a habit, right? So it works the same. If I develop the habit of noting my opponents on high stakes, I'll have it on low stakes. And the same for you. If you build this habit on low stakes, you will have it for high stakes. So yeah, have it in mind. And yeah, make notes, try to notice stuff, because this is the most important with making notes, to notice things that you believe they are not so common, that they might be some sort of extremes. Mm-hmm. 3x in king queen. Straight possible board, just check folding. Turn doesn't change much. I prefer checking and possibly bluffing the river. So on this river, we might fold him from 6, from 4, from 3, maybe from some ace highs. I think just the half pot is totally is enough. Whoa, went with the call with the ace high. So bluff catcher ace high versus 50% on 4 card straight. So, oh shit, I scrolled, I misclick. Yeah, so obviously happens not only for you, but for me as well. Misclicks, coolers, all of this stuff, or guys bluff catching you with ace highs. This happened for me, this happened for you. So this is a natural thing in poker, right? Room, there's edge everywhere. So yeah, we've got this note, which will be pretty useful, because when we play against this guy, we know that we can easily fire thin value bets against him, and yeah, and we shouldn't really bluff him. Okay, we've got a full house on the flop. We want our opponent to call his backdoors and weak his gut shots. So definitely 1BB size is our need. Now on the turn, the calling range is not too wide. Probably queen jack, queen 10, jack 10, 10 7. 7-6, so open-enders, a few flush draws. So if we battle, there are more gut shots, ace highs, king highs. So I think I'm between checking and bet check betting. Yeah, and I think I'll pick the check option. It's pretty hard to extract value here. I prefer receiving a river probe from these misdraws, and yeah, and on the river, as I want to get a call from these ace highs, king highs, I think half pot, maybe 4.5, if we knew something about the guy, would be the size. On the turn, it's pretty hard to get value from something. So yeah, even a king high. So that's pretty cool. A7 call, bluff catch king high versus 50% bet check bet. Trips board. So I think we got probably maximum that we could. 2 overcards, backdoor flush draw, definitely calling. We have lots of turns where we can, I mean, maybe not lots of, but if the turn brings a flush draw, we can easily call the battle. Okay, we break, we fold. 3-7, we have 2 per hand. The board has lots of straight draws, but our opponent is pretty shallow. this is good. There are some overcards, so I don't mind calling. I don't mind raising. As we are shallow, I'll pick rather calling. If we were deeper, I would definitely pick. Oh shit! I would definitely pick raising. Playing and commenting demands lots of focus, and this is a frequent thing to make some sit outs. Okay, we fire big float. The guy calls. Got to pair as well. Nothing out of the line. I mean, probably this check jam, I'm not a big fan of it. I would rather barrel small to get still value from my flop second, third pairs and gut shots. So not a big fan of a turn check jam. Ace queen, it's a 3x spot, so there are not many deuces and 5. So in this board structure, I'm completely, I really like betting, and it's a pure value bet. 1/4, as this is a sizing where lots of people make a mistake of not calling wide enough. So that's fine. If turns wouldn't bring 6, 7, or 8 of or clubs, we could easily check call. Obviously, versus float, we can just fold. We wait for our opponents. We face mid raise. We don't know much about our opponent. This hand possibly could be a 3-bet pre-flop, but I prefer playing post-flop if I don't know my opponent. He bets really small, so definitely I am okay with the raising. There are gut shots, there are nines, flush draws, ace highs, and yeah, and small bet doesn't. It's not too often a topper with a good kicker. So on the turn, I think a half pot bet. This is a safe sizing to get calls close to always from most of the draws, and definitely from all of the pairs. We don't need to build the pot that much to rip the river and get max value from a 9. So I think just half pot on the turn is fine. Oh, some zoom. Okay, so we raise pre-flop, second pair. We check, the guy checks. Sounds like we got the best hand if he just checked back. So we can easily fire a delay. We want to focus on a 7, on a 4, or some gut shot. So even though we've got the best hand, we don't want to necessarily use very big size. And now on the river, we can think between targeting a 4 or 7 or check call to get value from misdraws. But we've got the 8, which blocks some of the 5, 8, 6, 8, 8, 9, 8, 10. So I think betting very small, 25% is the way to go. He raised, and we're not so happy because definitely there are some kings with two-pair. People don't really raise bluff too often, so even versus small sizing, so small bet fold sounds the best option. Okay. Button limper again. I hope that you don't limp button too often, that you don't limp button at all, because this is not really a strategy that we want to follow. Okay, 3-bet jam, nothing spectacular. We got raise pot, not many deuces and threes in our opponent's range. It's a raised pot. So here with the low pair, sounds like the strategy of bet check is the best. We don't really want to check back the turn to give him free equity. There are for sure, there are not many deuces or threes that are better than us, as there are not many offsuited combos of these. Sizing on the flop was pretty low, so the range of our opponents is pretty wide. Not many eights, though many jacks would already raise pre-flop. So turn, small bet with the plan to check the river is often the best strategy versus long just fold, especially if still river completed some of the draws that definitely could be called. So yeah. Super. Again, not many deuces, threes, or gotchas like 3-4 or ace. So 1BB is deciding to allow our opponent calling his backdoors. Okay, we got lots of draws and gotchas and so on. So even though there's an ace, and these aces are, yes, possibly in our opponent's range, we want to bet. And he raised. Previously, we have seen donks and big sizing. So the problem here is that the aces are possible in the range. There could be some draws. But if this guy is aggressive, most likely we would need to stand more than 2 streets of aggression. So I'll just fold on the flop. Yeah. Raises, big blind versus button are not so common. On the left table, I went with the 1BB probe on draw heavy board with the plan to battle. Right, our hand doesn't really matter because our goal is to fold his air cards and misdraws. Straight possible board, the fold equity is not too high, so on these structures, it's better to go for a delay or delay, especially if the turn is an undercard, so it's hard to extract lots of fold equity even from a third pair. I prefer just going for a delay. Floating on the right table, half pot, as you can see, even ace high boards, people just check fold. Limp C betting. And checking back, our opponent for sure could have all of the pairs. So yeah. On the river, possibly we could think about turning our hand into a bluff, but still there are tens, there could be some slow plays. Not so sure if we should do it, so I'll just give it up. But if we had more info that this guy likes folding, we could consider bluffing this river. And it's less about us having a pair because we don't bid anything. It's more about tendency of our opponent. Okay, I think these are 2 last tables, and we'll finish our today's session. Again, floating half pot. Ace is not so good when the guy check called. Yeah, he goes to the donk, we can just fold. Meanwhile, obviously, if we have no action, we try not to get bored, but rather we want to observe what's going on the other table, spot some showdowns, we see some raise jump the turn. We might notice some reactions that will help us. Yeah, this is crazy, right? So as you can see, this guy raise, turn, all in, third pair on completed. So he's definitely a spazzer. And this guy called the jump, called turn. He went to 2 barrel, like turn bet. call all in with third pair. Right, so we see that one guy, this guy is definitely like a, oh, the note didn't save. So this guy is definitely like a passive maniac, let's call it that way. So for sure, jamming king 10, we can expect some crazy moves. Right, and only matter of seeing showdowns that we haven't been really been engaged to, gives us lots of insights and value. 5's jamming because even in the previous hand, right, he called this queen deuce, so it's a simple life for us. ISO shoving ace 10. I wouldn't ISO shove everything that sounds a bit better, like king 6 or whatever, because post flop we still have an edge over this guy, and most likely we just have to wait for a topper or whatever, and he'll pay us. So ace 10 or 5s, these are top range, but we shouldn't do it with every single hand. Right, we want to still play with this guy, wait for a hand. Probably c-betting and default strategy will not work, we'll see. So I might bet once, but not more. We have seen that he went with the bet and called the jam with sevens, right, to like a few hands ago. So even if the turn is a medium overcard, brings some additional equity to us, just check back, try to realize it and try to hit. Then 6 on this board, I think I'll go with bet check. Okay, he bets, so we're definitely calling. There are these random 8s, 9s. He could bet a weaker 6. His sizings are not too high, so I'm totally okay with calling a half pot on the river. Even a 5 sounds okay. Right, his range is not defined. It's not like called our bet or whatever. He could have everything here. That's a pretty important to note these guys, as we'll have plenty of value against them. Checking, right? We're not trying to semi-bluff him. We try to pick up a top pair or a second pair or better for the cheapest possible price. If he checks, I'm just going to the showdown. Check. It would be interesting to call him and maybe go to the showdown with this king. His range is pretty wide, and third boards obviously limit number of pairs. Small bet, okay, I'll call. Okay, it still doesn't really engage our stack size, so I think these are pretty okay. Deuce 3 I'll fold, because still we don't really have fold equity, so we prefer having hands that gives us some equity. He folded before, so actually in these dry structures we might fire. Maybe he had some moments of tilt, we'll see. 3BB 5-6 is not a hand that we want to play against him. 5-6 is a cool hand that we play as a semi-bluff, as something that could battle versus Rex versus guys who fold. But this hand will never catch a topper. And this 5-6 is a cool hand to hit some straights or flushes on small SPRs where the coolers matter. Let's say in a 3-bet pot, in ISO pot, in raised pot, but not really when we limp call. We'll never have a topper, and we can see that this guy bluffs. He likes betting with third, fourth, fifth, or whatever. He calls a lot, so yeah. So, and we are too shallow. Pot size bet, just fold the bottom pair. Will not stand to the showdown, and we want to stand to the showdown with this guy. Okay, folding versus check raise. He hasn't been doing that yet. Okay, 3x sounds like he might have changed his tempo. We'll see. Oh, it's pretty cool. On this structure, we blocked 2 flushes, obviously, not many aces, so this is pretty dry structure. I think I would check here if he checks and simply let him do something crazy or maybe improve to flush or whatever. But obviously, as he dunks, I'll just hold twice. Okay, got him. Last touch and GG guys. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and see you in next episodes. Kisses. Bye bye.